You guys are very kind. Did I hear correctly? Do you guys have a break after this? I have no idea now. I feel like I know better than I did before. I was hoping you guys were getting a break next week, maybe? Spring break? Okay, raise your hand if you've been taking it one day at a time, which is why that totally threw you off when I was talking about next week. You're like, I'm trying to make it through today. Okay. We are going to start with a game. I need 2 volunteers, and I need people who are not afraid to, speak in public. You're not going to have to do a speech. I mean, come on. And then maybe some, all right, come on. All right. Would you rather talk or guess? Do you want to talk?
Both. I'll talk. I can talk.
Go ahead. All right, here's how it's going to work. We have 1 speaker and 1 guesser. So what you're going to do is your only job is to just face forward. And then my friend here, I'm going to show something on the screen. And they are going to either describe what they see on the screen or they're just going to make something up. And your job is going to be to decide if they're telling the truth or if they're lying. So super straightforward. It's Friday. Some people have had a long week. We keep it simple because I'm a simple person. Are you ready?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So ready, go.
Oh, boy. Okay, so it's yellow, and it is a make-believe animal, and it flies in the sky, and let's see here. What else? It's got 4 legs. It's got 2 ears. It's got 2 horns.
You can stop whenever you want.
Yeah, I'm stopping.
A dragon? Oh.
But good guess. Good guess. All right, next one. Next one. Turn it out.
Oh, shoot, sorry.
Oh,
I'm sped, okay.
that's okay. We're good.
Okay. It's in a box. Oh, it's from Star Wars. It's, I don't know, he's in a box. And it's like a box that you would give to somebody. And it's like,
Not a box.
it's like, you know,
Yeah.
it's got a ribbon on it,
He's like, I do not know.
bro, I can even tell you what this is, it's like 2 different things.
All right, do you think she's... No idea?
Star Wars, it's a cool guy.
So do you think it's made up?
You're a cheater.
All right, next one. Let's try one more.
Oh, okay, listen. You dribble it on the ground, and it's wearing, a hat. Where did you find this? It's like, put it on the screen.
Basically.
Why? Okay.
She's like, why do you hate me?
Yeah, I just don't know what to tell you. It's 2 different objects put together. You dribble the one on the ground, and then you wear the other one.
Go ahead, check. All right. I promise you it is random. All right, here's the deal. Sometimes when we are texting with our friends, we'll be joking around. Maybe it'll be random like that game was. And sometimes all of a sudden things will switch and you'll think, okay, we're just goofing off, and then someone will say something and all of a sudden it gets real. And sometimes we get text messages like that. An example would be this video right here, where you're texting, you think it's light, someone just reaches out, and then before you know it, they say something kind of heavy. I've received text messages like this more than once from friends and people like that. I have the pleasure of working at a pro-life organization, and before that, I worked at a pregnancy clinic for a long time. I worked for a helpline, stuff like that. Now, most of us, if you're normal at all, when you receive a text message like that, you're going to take a beat. Because maybe you suspected it, but maybe you're as shocked as that other person. You're like, what do I say? So we're going to talk through a couple real-life stories, and then at the end, I'm also going to talk through a few tips in case one of your friends does go through something like that. Nod your head if you guys are with me. With me? Sound good? Cool. Okay, story time. I have a friend named Patty. What's her name? I think we can do better. What's her name? Thank you. By the way, this side is way louder than you guys, so I don't know what that's about. Patty grew up in South Dakota, and when I was living there, I met her, and she's amazing. She is brilliant. Nod your head if you have friends that are way smarter than you. Same. She's brilliant. She's traveled the world. She has helped people in the poorest places in the world. She's helped people with the most serious diseases in the world. She's like Superwoman or Superman, Wonder Woman. There we go. And she's just incredible. And when she went to college, she studied Phi Ed. And then after a while, she decided she wanted something different. And a lot of the people in her family were in medicine, doctors, and things like that. Nod your head if a lot of people in your family do the same gig. Like maybe you have a lot of teachers in your family, farmers, things like that. Maybe you have a family business. That's where I come from. Okay, so a lot of her family were doctors. And so it seemed like it was just a matter of time until, like them, she decided to get into medicine. So she decided to go to medical school. And while she was there, she got involved with this women's political group. And they were a very pro-abortion group. Then she went to do her residency in Indiana. And while she was doing her residency, she ended up being involved in a couple abortions. She was doing the procedures. And for the most part, she handled it pretty well. There was one procedure that kind of stuck with her, even years later. It was a double abortion. It was a pair of twins, and they were about 17 weeks old. And because of some of the lack of anesthesia and things like that, it kind of stuck with her, but to be honest, she kind of just pushed it down, decided to move on. She ended up moving back to South Dakota, and she worked part-time at Planned Parenthood. And she was doing a great job, and after a while, they had her become full-time. And while she was there full-time, she'd already gotten her OBGYN, she started working as the main person performing abortions in South Dakota. And so my friend was doing 1,000 to 3,000 abortions a year. Now, raise your hand if you've ever been to South Dakota. Okay, that's more than I would have expected. Would you say there's a lot of people there? No, if I remember correctly, there's more cows than people in South Dakota. So for her to be doing thousands of abortions, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. And what happened is she started to notice some stuff that just didn't sit right with her. For example, it used to be a veterinary office, and some of the cleanliness standards were not what she thought they should be. There were some drugs that would go missing. There was money that was embezzled. When she was meeting with these young ladies, and some were older, but a lot were younger, they didn't want her to counsel them. So, true story, there was a girl who came in, probably not a lot older than you, and she was really kind of torn. And my friend Patty could tell. And Patty ended up saying something like, "Are you sure you want to do this? Like, do you want to take another day just to think about it?" And the girl said, I kid you not, she said, "Yeah, but I paid $400. If I leave, will they refund it?" And Patty said, "I think they will." And the girl's like, "Yeah, but we don't know." And she decided to have the abortion. More and more, she was told, "Hey, we want you to go in and out, get these procedures done. The more, the faster, the better." And that started to kind of wear on her. And it reached a point where Patty decided to leave the industry. She took some time to herself. She actually kind of went through a dark period. And I don't know if this is true for you guys, but to be honest, for me, I'm way better about turning to God when things are going badly. When things are going really well, my prayer life isn't as good. I'm not as good about relying on God. But when I get really desperate and I feel like there's nothing else to do, I know this isn't how it's supposed to be, but I'm just being extra real. Those are the times when I remember to pray. And she got so low and things got so dark that she decided to go to a church in her neighborhood. She'd heard good things, thought she'd check it out. And she ended up becoming a Christian. And then she ended up becoming pro-life. And what's crazy is she went to this women's Christian conference when she was pretty early in the faith, and they were doing this thing where they had people come up and share their stories. And when she describes it, she says it's almost like there was this invisible hand like kind of pushing her, and she found herself walking towards the front of the stage. And she's like, "What am I doing?" She is not a public speaker. She's an introvert. Raise your hand if you're an introvert. It's really mean to make introverts raise their hands because they're like, "I don't want attention. Why are you doing this to me?" And she found herself for the first time publicly talking about some of her experiences, talking about these thousands of abortions that she did. Well, she ended up learning that we have a really big God. And no matter how badly we screw up, and I'll be honest, I've screwed up before, God is bigger than that, and he's a God of forgiveness. And she ended up turning her life around and became this pro-life leader. She even wrote a book called The Unexpected Choice. It's a quick read. I really like the way she writes, highly recommend it. Raise your hand if you love a good taco truck, right? Tacos are my favorite. Even for Halloween, I was Taco Belle. And so if you know Belle from Beauty and the Beast, I know it's cheesy. I had the Belle dress, and I had like a Taco Bell purse. I had hot sauce earrings, like I'm all about it. And so imagine that we had a Shoreland taco truck. And our tacos are really good. We're making tons of money. Like we're getting a new gym, we're getting all of it. And then it starts to kind of come up that people who eat our tacos get really bad diarrhea. Like really bad, like they're out for a day. If we're making a lot of money and we're kind of shady, we're gonna suppress that news as much as we can. We're not gonna want anyone to find out. And so when I share sometimes true things that I've observed or that friends have shared about their experiences at abortion clinics, I think it's natural to have a certain part of us be like, if that were true, like wouldn't I have heard about it? Like wouldn't we know about it? But the truth is, for example, Planned Parenthood, and again, some of you have maybe had different experiences with them, but they perform hundreds of thousands of abortions every year. And I mention that to say they have over $2 billion, that's with a B, dollars worth of assets. They got a lot of money. If people have lots and lots of money, do you think they can keep bad press down? Absolutely, we know that, right? And that's kind of what we see with a lot of the abortion industry. But again, I don't expect you guys to take my word for it. Here's another former abortion worker sharing her story.
She was way further along than what we were allowed to do, but we went ahead and embarked on this procedure anyways. It was a high dollar abortion. And so, we were trying to get her to labor out for 4 days, round the clock. She finally was able to labor out. There was a lot of bleeding. She was not stable. We purposely discharged her to the hotel because we didn't want anything to happen on the premises. We didn't want to have to call 911. We didn't have to alert the authorities about that. So the quicker we were able to get her out of there, and on the way out, she said, "Am I not pregnant anymore?" We said, "Yes, we're done. The procedure is done." Didn't give her any antibiotics or anything, and she lost her life at the hotel. But it wasn't our problem at that point. It was their problem.
For Planned Parenthood, have worked for the abortion industry, and that's a little bit of where I'm coming from. As someone who has people that have been inside, I've been in the clinic, I've seen, the blood stains and things like that. And something that a group of people that I think often gets missed in these conversations are the folks who are working at the clinics, okay? Research has found that about 18% of those who are working in the abortion clinics attempt suicide. About twice as many think about it, but think about it, about 1 in 5 attempt suicide. All right, if we talk about red flags a lot, especially with dating and things like that, I think it's fair to say that's a red flag. If almost 1 in 5 of your employees are hurting so bad that they think about ending it, that's a bad sign. And so as I share this, some of you might be thinking, so why would somebody work there? And there's a couple reasons. Typically, the people that work there are very similar to some of the clients. So they do seem to almost target neighborhoods that are high poverty, high minority. A lot of times these jobs pay really well compared to comparable stuff. And for some of these folks, it's the first time they've had really good insurance. And when you get old, you start caring about, that's when I knew I'd reached a certain point that I was officially old, when all of a sudden I started caring about insurance more and things like that. It was an odd moment. It wasn't good. Here's the deal. Sometimes they will start out doing things like reception, or maybe they're giving someone birth control pills, or maybe they're in the recovery room, and they think, this is great. They don't know anything about the abortions, because when these jobs are advertised a lot of times, they don't say abortion clinic. They'll say something like women's health clinic, which I think all of us would say, hey, that sounds like a really good thing. And then one day they come into work, and one of the rooms will look totally different, because all of the abortion equipment will be moved in. And again, some people will say, ooh, well, I'm not the one doing that. It's not my thing. And then more time passes, and they'll end up, for some reason, what we call the POC room. This is the room where, for example, when you have a second trimester abortion, the baby is too big, the parts are too big to fit through the suction device. And so they have to do things to make the parts smaller. Then they collect the parts, they go into a different room where they try to reassemble them to make sure that all the parts are there. Because the truth is, if one of the baby's body parts are left in the woman, it can cause bleeding, it can cause infection, it can cause all this different stuff. And for a lot of abortion workers, that's when it becomes real. Now, the cool thing is, those who are looking to leave the industry don't have to do it alone. There's a group started by former employees called And Then There Were None. Nod your head if you've heard of them. I didn't know. Okay. They're amazing. They're absolutely amazing. It was started by a woman named Abby Johnson. And what they do is they help those who want to leave the industry make sure they have a new job to come to, a job that they like, a job they're proud of. Make sure they have insurance for them and their kids. And it's a game changer. I also think of my friend Norma. So Norma was 16. Raise your hand if you're 16. My 16-year-olds. Okay, she was 16. She was going out on a date with her boyfriend. They'd been together for a little while. She thought it'd be a normal date. And it turned into a nightmare because he forced himself on her. And this was not how she ever pictured her first time. And she started to feel weird, suspected she might be pregnant, found out, yeah, she probably was pregnant. Someone gave her the address. She lived out in LA. And so she went to this clinic in Glendale. And she walked in, and she thought it was going to be kind of warm, more like a doctor's office. And she says, it was so cold. And she sat there in the waiting room, and there's about 10 of them, and nobody would make eye contact with anyone else. And there was this part of her that's like, I don't want to do this. But then there's this other part of her that thought, I'm not even out of school. I am not ready to be a mom, and was freaking out. And so she went through with the abortion. And one of the things she had noticed in some of the signs and flyers and things like that was the suggestion that abortion could work kind of as birth control. She was really afraid that if she got birth control pills that her parents would find them and that they would completely freak out. And so she started using abortion as her birth control. So she had abortion after abortion after abortion. Now some time passed, she ended up getting married, they had some kids, and one night she was at this church event and there was a speaker who shared her abortion story. And Norma could have sworn that this lady was telling her story. It was crazy. And afterwards, she had these flyers for these private after-abortion support groups. And Norma decided to go. And that very night, she felt a difference. You see, leading up to that, she had been experiencing some really hardcore mental, emotional, physical side effects. She had migraines that would last for days. She had back pain. She had all of these things going on. She was so depressed, she wasn't sure if she wanted to stay alive. It had gotten really dark. And she went through this program, and again, she learned that God was bigger than our biggest mistakes. And she found healing, and she got involved with pro-life work. Now, I tell you these stories because something that people used to say about abortion is they used to say, yeah, it's not a good thing, but like, let's keep it safe, let's keep it rare. I don't feel like I hear the rare part as much anymore, but sometimes people still talk about the idea of it being safe. But when we look at the research, when I think about conversation after conversation after conversation that I've had with people, a lot of them, not everyone, everyone's experience is different, but a lot of them have had bad experiences. Another really common thing that you hear about this, because I feel like there's a lot of noise about this issue, especially around political times, right? Those commercials, I was so sick of the commercials. Either side, like I was just done with it. But you'll hear the idea that abortion is health care. And I think generally people who are saying that, it's coming from a good place. I think they're thinking, we want women to be strong, we want women to be safe, we want them to be healthy. We all agree on that. But if I were to explain, for example, what healthcare is to a little kid, I would talk about the idea of keeping us healthy, keeping us safe. And the truth is, for an abortion to be considered a success, it means someone doesn't make it. I don't know about you guys, I've heard some really scary news stories lately, especially from some of the states that have pro-life laws. Nod your head if you've heard some of them too, right? Maybe down in Texas or Georgia. Something that's come up is a lot of times headlines can be kind of misleading. And if you do some digging, a lot of these stories are really tragic. There's people that should be alive. Come Easter, there's people that should be able to hang out with their family. Come Christmas, there's people that should be at the dinner table that aren't going to be because of these tragic losses of life. But if you dig into the laws, which are usually blamed for these women's deaths, every single one of these states, the law says that measures absolutely can and should be taken to make sure that we protect the life of the mother. Now, unfortunately, just like every other thing, whether it's cops or teachers or pastors, there's bad ones out there. And it's true with medical professionals too. And a lot of my friends that are doctors would say that. And so a lot of times in these stories, it's actually not a tragedy because of a law, it's a tragedy because of bad doctors. And the truth is, we do have a real problem with this in this country. Women deserve better. We have to do better. So going back to the texting, things would get even more complicated if you find out that the person involved was sexually assaulted, like my friend Norma. This is a picture of my friend Robin. This is from when we did a girls' trip down in Texas. Raise your hand if you're a coffee drinker. Who are my coffee people? Anyone into coffee? Okay, she started her own coffee company. It's called Brewed Grit. And then raise your hand if you have a favorite hoodie. I feel like we all have a favorite hoodie, right? Okay. If you don't, I mean, her merch, maybe that will become your favorite hoodie. But she sells all these awesome products, and one of the reasons she does it is to raise money for charity and then also to share her story. You see, she grew up in a very religious Christian family, and she was engaged to this guy, and he became abusive. True or false? Typically when people are abusive, they do it right away. They're super obvious about it. True or false? False, right? True or false? Sometimes some of the most abusive, evil people can come off really, really charming. True or false? Right? That's why sometimes when people share about what they're experiencing, people don't want to believe it, right? That was her fiance. And it got bad, and she found herself pregnant. And in her case, I saw something that I've seen before. She made the same decision that most people who conceive through sexual assault make. Now, just to be clear, I think anyone that does this should have the maximum punishment. I'm fine with us locking them away. Okay? What people like Robin and Norma experience is not their fault, and it should never be happening. When she went through that, she made the same choice, though. Of those that conceive through sexual assault, which is a very, very small population, but it does happen, she chose life. And the research says that's what most people do. And some people have a theory why. And what I've heard is that people like my friend Robin choose life because they know better than probably anybody what it's like to have your autonomy, to have your body violated that way. And so especially to people like them, the idea of doing that to somebody else, they just can't tolerate it. And so like most people in that situation, she continued her pregnancy. And as I've seen with other people in my life, that gave her the motivation to get out of that dangerous situation. It probably saved her life too. And she ended up taking a break from the whole dating thing, and she met an amazing guy. They got married. They have really cute kids. And that baby, AJ, that she conceived through her ex, has a smile that would light up any room. Like, you could be the toughest guy ever, and I don't care. If you saw that little guy coming towards you, you're going to bust out a huge smile because he has this, like, magical style to him, and he can do that, okay? Speaking of difficult situations, I have another friend. I have a few friends. I know it's obnoxious. And we're going to call her Lana. And I remember when I met her, when we were talking the day that she found out she might be pregnant. She was crying. Her and her guy had gotten into a fight. They were getting evicted. They already had 2 kids. And she always had a smile on her face, but she felt like this might be too much. And she was crying and crying. And I did a pregnancy test for her. It was positive. And she took a good month at least to decide what she wanted to do. Because I think we'd all agree she was in a really difficult situation. And what she decided was best for her family was for her to make an adoption plan. Now, I don't know about you guys, but whenever people talk about abortion, stuff like that, I feel like I hear people mention the foster system. Nod your head if you've heard that brought up. Again, I'm not going to pretend I know you guys, but I'm confident that we would all agree that that system is broken. We would all agree that it needs an overhaul. It needs to be very, very different. Sometimes I think some people will confuse adoption with the foster system, and they're 2 completely different systems. And the truth is, when people like Lana decide to make an adoption plan, they get to pick out the family. In her case, they've kept a relationship, so the 2 families are very close. And she was able to give a family that wanted a baby so, so badly a little girl. Okay? She made their whole lives better. I have the picture of the Pokemon card because Her son is my godson, and one of his most prized possessions were his Pokemon cards, and so he gave me this one. I have no idea if it's worth anything, but either way, I'm not going to sell it because it's special to me. She went through those difficult situations. A lot of times, people will look at these difficult situations, and instead of trying to get rid of the difficult situation, maybe poverty, things like that, and helping this person get in a better situation, we tell them, oh, let's get rid of the baby instead of the problem. And that's not compassion. But what if you got one of these text messages from a friend? What would you do? Maybe part of you would freak out for a second, if you're normal. What you could do is let them know, this is probably my best advice in these situations, is to tell them that you are going to be there with them, that they can do this, that they're not going to have to go through it alone. Let them know that no matter what happens, you will have their back. Because that's what we all want to hear when we go through stuff. Now, this is going to be cheesy, but we live in Wisconsin, so I feel like it's okay. Do difficult things. Women are so much stronger than they might feel. You are a lot stronger than you might feel at certain times. And the truth is, Satan doesn't want you to know that. Satan wants you to feel weak. He wants you to feel like you can't do this. Satan loves abortion. And one of the things I love about getting to be involved with pro-life work is we get to have women's backs. We get to let them know that no matter what they decide, no matter what happens, we will be there for them. We get to let them know that they are strong and that there are resources, and they don't have to go a day without support. Now, it costs nothing for somebody to say that, and I think a lot of us have heard stuff that's not true. And so the important thing is that this is backed up with action. Pregnancy centers usually give out over $350 million of free services every year. That's a lot of services. Now, again, the first thing some people might think of with an unplanned pregnancy is Planned Parenthood. If you look at this chart, this one shows that typically, depending on who you talk to, there's at least 5 of these free pregnancy clinics for every one Planned Parenthood, which means there's way, way, way more of these free health clinics than there are Planned Parenthoods. And again, every service is free. That's a big difference. Now, why don't we necessarily hear about them as much? We don't have millions of dollars to spend on marketing. The truth is, a lot of the people that come to free pregnancy clinics, like the one I used to work with, the ones you've heard about hopefully this week, they get a lot of their clients by referrals. Because going back to the taco truck analogy, if you find a really good taco truck and you're a good person, you're going to tell your friends, right? And so in the same way, that happens with pregnancy clinics. These pregnancy clinics offer a range of services. If your friend finds out they might be pregnant, the first thing they need to do is find out for sure. For example, a lot of people get a pregnancy test at a Dollar Tree. Now, I love Dollar Tree. They get a lot of my paycheck. But the truth is, their pregnancy tests are not the most reliable. I remember one day a girl opened up her pocket and she took out a Ziploc, and in that Ziploc she had 3 pregnancy tests. And one of them was positive, and one of them was negative, and one of them just looked weird. And she kind of just put it down and looked at me. And I kind of looked at that and looked at her. And we did a free pregnancy test. And then, based on her last period, we did an ultrasound. And we found out that she did have a viable pregnancy. Typically, before people find out they're pregnant, their baby already has that heartbeat. Okay, the ultrasound is a huge piece. There's also something called ectopic. What's it called? Ectopic pregnancies. These are situations where the baby and the mom could lose their life. This is part of why ultrasound is so, so important, no matter what. The ultrasound helps to make sure that the baby is growing in the right place, not, for example, the fallopian tube. So that's another reason why if you have a friend who's pregnant, they need to get to an ultrasound. They need to get free ultrasound. And so when you get these ultrasounds, the bonus is if you want to look, usually it's optional. In my experience, every time it's optional. You are able to see the reality. Because it's one thing to hear stuff like, oh, you might be pregnant. It's a completely different thing to see that little person. Even before a baby's born, typically they will suck their thumbs, And what's crazy is during the ultrasounds, when they go to suck their thumbs, sometimes it looks like they're waving. And I have seen more and more dads who are real quiet. They look real serious the whole time. And that little baby does what looks like a wave. And maybe they look down and they smile. They get this big smile. And they're probably thinking, I have no idea how we're going to do this. But they realize all of a sudden, whoa, that's my kid. There's a number of different ways to find pregnancy centers that are free, that are confidential, that will help you out. There's Pregnancy Decision Line. There's Option Line. I used to work for them. Anyone here work for either a coffee shop or a gas station? Okay, I know we talk about cops and nurses saving lives, and they do. But I'll be honest, sometimes I think these places where you can get caffeine are probably saving lives too. Because some folks, if they don't get their caffeine, we might have a fatality. When I worked at Option Line, we would man phones sometimes till 4 a.m. And we would always go to the Speedway next door to get our coffee. And we would talk to people all over the country with unplanned pregnancies. Maybe it was someone who just had sex for the first time, and they're like, could I be pregnant? They ask all kinds of wild questions. Right in this area, there's a place called Alliance. What's it called? Alliance is a women's clinic. They are free. What are they? What are they? They are free. They will give free services to you, to your friends, to whoever needs it. They offer things like ultrasound. Okay? They offer free baby help. The truth is, once a woman finds out she's pregnant, there's going to be all kinds of support. There's going to be baby clothes, car seats, things like that. People will have their back. Raise your hand if you like Chick-fil-A. All right, everyone do me a favor. Everybody stand up. Everybody stand up. All right, we're going to talk about Chick-fil-A's customer satisfaction because it's very, very high. If you think that their customer satisfaction is at least 50%, stay standing. Okay, if you think it's at least 65, stay standing. If you think their customer satisfaction is 70%, stay standing. 80? 85? Okay, you guys are right. Go ahead and sit down. It's 85. That is the highest. They've actually won the award for highest customer satisfaction 9 years in a row. Now, do me a favor, stand up again. I know, I'm mean, I know. I'm sorry. It's like a Lutheran church service. Stand, sit down, that's what we do. Stay standing as long as you think the customer satisfaction fits pregnancy centers. So people come into these pregnancy centers, they do exit surveys, they leave ratings. 70%. If you think pregnancy centers have a 70% customer satisfaction, stay standing. All right. You guys have a high opinion of them, don't you? If you think pregnancy centers have an 80% customer satisfaction, stay standing. If you think they have a 90% customer satisfaction, stay standing. 95. We're getting really high. All right, it's actually 97%. So if you go and do research, if you look at the actual facts, 97% client satisfaction. I don't care where your opinion is on this, that is a very, very high customer satisfaction. When you go to one of these places, they'll typically have what we call Before You Decide magazine. I'm going to shoot one of the staff an email with a couple resources. I'm going to send you guys the link for this e-magazine. It talks through the different pregnancy options. It talks about abortion procedures. It talks about adoption. It answers questions like, well, what if my partner's not supportive? Or how do I tell my parents? Really practical stuff. And it's totally free. I'll make sure you guys get the link. Whenever I talk about this stuff, I hear this line a lot. And the truth is, when I hear that line, my first thought is, that's an important thing, especially as a woman, for us to have bodily autonomy. I think we should be able to make a lot of decisions for ourselves. We are grown. We have brains. Let us make decisions for our lives. I think that especially applies to school, to where we work, to who we date, to the tattoos we might want to get. But I think if we're honest, all of us think that there are limits too. Years ago, there was a drug that moms were taking. And what they figured out is that if you took it, there's about 1 in 5 chance that your baby would have deformed arms or legs. 1 in 5. Which is why it became outlawed. Now, if I were pregnant, I'm not, I just like to eat. But let's say I'm pregnant and I am in my 3rd trimester. Would you guys be cool with me taking that drug? Of course not. My friends that are hardcore in support of abortion, even they would say, no, 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 that's too much. Because even though we all believe this, some of us also believe that there are limits. I think all of us would say there are certain things that cross the line. The truth is, when you have a person growing inside you, you have a different obligation to them than some stranger. The truth is, a woman's body is designed to have that possibility, that possible function of growing a human being. That baby is dependent on you in a unique way. It's different than any other relationship. It's different than if some stranger said, hey, give me an organ, right? And so, while this is a very important idea, I think sometimes we take it a little bit too far. And part of that is because from the first moment a person exists, a human, they have their own DNA. You guys know this. They're living. We know that because they're growing. They're human because they have human DNA. They have a human mom and dad. Sometimes I feel like people say you either have to be team baby or team mom. And I hate that idea because I don't like to pick.
One thing has long divided Mexicans more than any other. They tried many ways to keep the peace. Then one day,
¿Por qué no los dos?
introducing Old El Paso hard and soft tacos. Crunchy.
All right, I think no matter what your opinion is on this stuff, we can agree that we can help moms and babies, that we can love them both. We don't have to pick either one. So what I do is I'm a teacher. I lead a group for single moms. I go to St. where women come in who are pregnant, who have little ones. We help them. We help them make sure they have a place to stay. We help them make sure they have a doctor that they like. Part of the mortality issue is a lot of women aren't finding doctors they feel comfortable with. Okay, we want to pair them with good doctors. We help them by having a big, big baby shower where they get so many gifts we usually can't fit them in one car. Again, it's easy to say, oh, choose life. But we help them because after they make that decision, a lot of times that's when the hard work comes. And that's why we want to walk with them day in and day out. It's just silly. Benjamin Watson is a retired NFL player. I met him in DC a few years ago. I love this quote from him because it's true. A lot of women wouldn't be having abortions if the men would step up and be a part of what they are already biologically a part of. Okay? I know what it's like to be on the phone with a guy who is freaking out because the girl who he thought loved him is pregnant and she's on her way to the abortion clinic. I've talked to a guy who's screaming, she's going to kill my child. And the truth is, there really wasn't much he could do about it. And I could listen to him and I could support him. We'd given her accurate information about the procedures, the resources, her options. But the truth is, it wasn't a choice that he had. A lot of times, we'll talk about men being held responsible. We'll talk about that especially when it comes to things like child support. But they also deserve to have a voice when it comes to a pregnancy. The nice thing is we know women are strong. We know women are smart. We know that they are powerful. And so we get to support them as they make these tough decisions. Again, I refuse to pick. I think a woman can be a mom and she can go after her dreams. If you look at the women who got us the right to vote, which is a really big deal to me, again and again, whether it's Alice Paul or Susan B. Anthony, hopefully you heard about them in your history classes, they were pro-life. All right, we're gonna
3, 2,
skip past
1.
this.
3.
All right, I'm going to dare you guys to visit a website. This is a quick preview of what that website looks like.
1.
What do you think about abortion?
I'm like hella liberal, so it's like obviously I'm pro-abortion.
There are times when you do need abortion and it's up to that person and their rights and what they want to do.
It's our body, it's our decision, right?
If you're young, it's probably a good thing. If you want to go to college, it's hard with a baby in college.
And would you identify as pro-life, pro-choice, or neither?
Pro-choice, for sure.
I'm like hella liberal, so it's like Like obviously, I'm pro-abortion.
There are times when you do need abortion, and it's up to that person and their rights and what they want to do.
It's our body. It's our decision, right?
If you're young, it's probably a good thing. You want to go to college. It's hard baby in college.
Would you identify as pro-life, pro-choice, neither?
Pro-choice, for sure. I had no idea this is how abortion takes place, right? Looking at the video and the way it was performed, it's an eye-opener. So no, I don't think any kid, any baby, any infant, any fetus should go through that. No.
I mean, it seems just in general, anytime you kill something inhumane.
That you have your own gifts, you have your own passions. And this is a young lady named Maya. She had a little sister who was born really early, 30 weeks. And when Maya saw her little 30-week-old sister fighting for her life, she decided she wanted to do something. And she started an organization. She started talking to politicians. She started raising awareness about this stuff. And the truth is, because of people like Maya, there's going to be people that have a first birthday. There's going to be moms that feel like, hey, they can get through this. There's going to be dads who get to hold their child. And the truth is, that's an impact that you guys can make too. So there's lots of different ways for you to be involved. This is what she said. This is the last thought. Just stay with me. Don't ever think you're too young or too old to make a difference. God has opened doors for me through wiser people, and I've learned from other teens as well. The key is to find what you do best, use it to make an impact in your community. When you use your God-given abilities to glorify God, amazing things can happen. And I do believe that about you guys. I believe you guys can make a huge impact. So thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you.
All right, if you guys have any questions, Rachel's going to be here a little bit after. We encourage you at the end of Life Week now to join the Students for Life group. We meet almost every Friday. Thank you guys for sitting through this. And Mr. Mitchell would like his forensics kids to meet by the stage. And are there any other announcements? All right, you guys are dismissed.